Now, Challenger 2 tanks supplied by the UK to Ukrainian forces have been used in their cross-border incursion into Russia, a source has told the BBC. Kyiv says it's expanding its military operation in the Kursk region, and within the past hour or so, a top commander has said the country's troops advanced a further 1.5 kilometres in the past day. But Russia insists they are pushing back. Our correspondent Will Vernon has the latest.
In Russia, evacuations from parts of the border regions continue. Thousands of people have been forced to flee their homes. Big guns were firing constantly, this woman tells Russian state TV. My house was shaking and the furniture was moving around. The Russian military is desperately trying to stop the Ukrainian advance, releasing more pictures allegedly of strikes against Ukrainian forces.
In our sector, everything's under our control. We are destroying the enemy. A little further along, they got through, but we're seeing to them.
But these satellite images show that trenches are being dug in the region. Russia is urgently bringing in workers to build the defences. That means Moscow is concerned about further gains for Ukraine, and Kyiv says it continues to make progress, albeit at a slower pace. Ukrainian soldiers have released more footage, apparently showing them removing Russian flags from buildings in villages they've seized during the incursion. President Zelensky claims his forces are moving forward.
We need other weapons, missiles, and we continue to work with our partners on long-term solutions for Ukraine because these are needed for victory.
And Ukraine's allies seem to be listening. Today, the UK government said Kyiv can use British-supplied weapons, such as these Challenger 2 tanks, inside Russian territory. In a statement to the BBC, the Ministry of Defence said Ukraine has a clear right of self-defence against Russia's attacks, which includes operations inside Russia. The battle for the Kursk region rages on, but there's politics at play here too. Ukraine wants to show its Western backers that it can still fight and win. Will Vernon, BBC News.
With me is our defence correspondent, Jonathan Beale. Hi, Jonathan. So what is the significance here of UK and Western equipment being used?
I don't think we should be that surprised because ministers, officials here have repeatedly said it's up to Ukraine how it uses the weapons Britain has supplied. Today it said that policy had not changed, the Ministry of Defence said, and it applied to this incursion inside Russia, which they view, clearly the Ukrainians, as self-defence, part of their self-defence, trying to get Russia out of their own territory. So I don't think we should be surprised in that sense. The Ministry of Defence not confirming that Challenger tanks or what any British supplied kit is actually inside Russia at the moment, but a UK source has told me that that includes Challenger tanks that have been used in this strike operation. And again, we should not be surprised because we've seen a lot of other Western armour being used by the Ukrainians because they are essentially using some of their best trained, best equipped units to make this border breakthrough and able to do it in a way that they weren't able to, if you remember their offensive last year. The reason why those tanks were sent, 14 British Challenger tanks were sent in the first place, was so Ukraine could take back its own territory in the south. That was thwarted because of the heavy defences, the minefields that Russia had put in place. They clearly haven't met that in Russia because Russia wasn't expecting necessarily an invasion to take place there. Should say that one of those Challenger tanks, of course, was destroyed last year in that operation in the south.
And back to the incursion, what's your assessment of how it's actually going?
Well, I think we've certainly seen it slow down. And, you know, initial stages were successful, partly because they were able to use troops, artillery, armour, tanks, drones, air defences, combined together, what the nerds call combined arms manoeuvre, in a way that they weren't able to do for their offensive last year. But it is slowing down and it is meeting resistance and it'll become harder to push forward. It may be at the end of the day, and we've seen this happening, to put defensive lines in. So we've seen Dragon's Teeth, anti-tank traps, razor wire being put up by the Ukrainians, Russia too digging in. So we may end up with a sort of another frozen line of the contact here at some stage, but clearly it's more important for Russia that it pushes Ukraine out, because this is damaging to President Putin. I think one of the key things, and we heard that in Will's package, was this repeated request from Ukraine: allow us to use those Western long-range missiles to hit targets inside Russia. Now, Britain's given Ukraine Storm Shadow, but it hasn't given Ukraine permission still to use those inside Russia. And that, Ukraine believes, is hampering their ability to defend themselves. So there is increasing pressure for them to do that. But at the moment, that is one restriction that the UK have not lifted.